Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pinus Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. Here, I got another young 20-something millennial Gen Y Z guy, I should call it, Professor Pixel, who's with us tonight. Of course, for Great Midwest, I have RDV, who'll be popping in shortly. He kind of co-guests with me on Tuesday nights on our action reviews. We'll be doing Rabbit Hole, the next episode, the Kiefer Sutherland Paramount Plus movie on that Tuesday night. Check it out. Book it, as they say. And what's on the book for tonight? Well, I can't wait for RV to get in because he and I have covered what I like to affectionately call canon classics. The canon film movie catalog is one of the best out there from top to bottom. It's generally a bunch of really B-rated movies with super low budgets that the studio said we want to give people exactly what they want. Here we have a 1980s fantasy movie with Sean Connery in it. It's a take on Sir Gawain and the Green Knight about a young lad that has to spend a year out trying to figure out this riddle because otherwise he's going to die at the hand of Sean Connery, and a really low budget, goofy ass kind of movie. And I think it's a pretty interesting read. And all I'll say is this: is there's a couple versions floating out there that you can watch for free if you get the pan and scan one. I'm sorry, because this is the kind of movie that you, like our other sword and sorcery type Sandal movies, you got to take with a grain of salt. But actually, some of the positives of this movie is it looks good. The sets are pretty decent. It's filmed in a couple places, Ireland, I think, Scotland, whatever. Looks kind of nice. It's got a great opening hook. It's almost like a James Bond movie that, we get this nice little thing like, fuck this, simple kind of hook. Easy storytelling, kind of fades in the middle a little bit towards the end. And I have a big theory as to why, and all that has to do with a hunky man meat, which, again, if you've listened to our Dark Shadows review, you'll understand that there's got to be a hunk in a lot of shows. And that's something that I think is very apropos. And of course, from the Great Midwest, we have RDV, who I'd like to go to first, since he is also a canon classic captain, as you were. And I got to ask you, RDV, I don't even know if you've ever seen this film, but what's your initial take?
Never heard of it. Never even heard of was it Miles O'Keefe?
Yep.
Sean Connery's in it. John Rhys Davies is in it. We have Peter Cushing, Trevor Howard. So I was like, oh, it's got some big names in here, so I might as well just check it out. And if you guys want to watch this, you can watch this on Tubi. That's where I'm watching.
Print on that one.
Yeah. 1984. I never knew this was even a movie. I've never seen it advertised anywhere. I've never seen it in any. It was never at Blockbuster. It was never something like this. Like, I'm surprised this was even a film. Like,
it's a canon classic, bro. This is after he did Never Say Never Again, which is a modernizing remake of Thunderball, which is actually not bad, but a lot of people don't like to count it because it was made from a different James Bond studio, even though it's got James Bond in it. So go figure.
Well, I had no idea it was even canon, so you just told me now.
It seems like a canon film now, doesn't it? We reviewed a movie a couple weeks ago, or about a month or two ago, called The Magic Sword, yes, which I think was a far better movie than this. Okay.
Now, not to say that this was a bad movie. It was interesting. I'd say where I'd rank it is right above mid. It's a one and done. Yeah. Sean Connery as the Green Knight is always a pleasure to see.
Thank you.
Just whenever you see him, like in Highlander, he steals the movie.
Yes, I do.
Stop. No, I agree with you, and this is the kind of movie that, again, you have to like this sort of thing. You have to kind of seek it out. But the thing with canon films I'd like to talk about here on Xtreme Movie Shows, we like to say we're 80s based because that's when I grew up and really got in movies. But I was of an age where I think the movie watching experience was different than, Professor Pixel here is a young 20-something who I'm going to go to here in a moment for his initial take. And then RDV, you're kind of in the middle, so we all have our different interests. But the one thing about this movie that is pretty good is we can clearly say that, with all the movies that we watched in the 80s, the big budgets, the low budgets, the offbeat ones, there definitely is a market for this B-level type filmmaking. And when you had, your main movies, say, in a drive-in theaters, which are still around in the 80s, you'd have a B-level type movie like this packaged on the other one, and it's just entertainment purposes only. The thing I want to mention here is Miles O'Keefe, and I'm going to go into my hunky man meat theory here in a minute on why this movie kind of fizzles out, but I'm really curious. Pixel, you've got no idea what the hell is going on here, do you?
No. No. I'm going to be honest. I woke up early this morning, like over like an hour before I had to for work because I wanted to watch the episode Wayward Pines before. And so I was kind of half watching, standing up to stay awake during this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was very tired.
It's Tubi's got a lot of good stuff on there, and occasionally we like to review what's playing on, say, Tubi, or Freevee is a newer one that I think Amazon's pushing a lot of things too, and so we like to pick them out. Once in a while we'll find a gem, and
For me,
this one came up. What's that, RDV?
I was gonna say, for me, this falls in the same category as Robinson Crusoe. It's just fantasy Robinson Crusoe for me. It's the same kind of like entertainment value, at least for me it is, because it's like it's not something I get excited over. Oh, I gotta want to watch it, but it's like, oh, I'll watch it once because it's a classic.
Or you put it on while you're doing chores and realize it's not as horrible, and it serves its purpose. Because the thing about this movie is this: in the '80s, we talked about fantasy films. There's more of the English variety. They were a little bit more serious, I think, because a lot of the writers from there and writing original science fiction and whatnot took it. But then you had an Americanized version with Flash Gordon, with Conan, with the Lord of the Rings animated adaptation. Fantasy coming to movies is something that was able to actually be done because it wasn't done that much. So again, I go back to Conan. There's a scene at the beginning of the original Conan with Schwarzenegger where his dad, his father, is telling young Conan about the riddle of steel, about what you can trust and not. And the guy that plays him, William Smith, recently died, and he is, RDV, you'll know this, we haven't reviewed them yet, but he's the guy that Clint Eastwood gets into a punching fight with, and I think any which way you can. You've seen this guy everywhere if you've watched television in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, so Pixel, you may not know him. But the thing that was really neat with Conan is you go, wow, this guy's really powerful, he's making the most of his time, he's a man's man. And the thing about it is on Conan, a lot of the guys that were there were Arnold's crew. They were the Venice Beach bodybuilders and all that. They were big hulking guys. In this movie, if I were to ask you guys, hey, if you think of Tarzan, what do you think of? You'd go, oh, well, one of the Skarsgårds did the chicken broccoli rice steroid cycle and did a movie recently, which nobody remembers other than, wow, he's really ripped and lean. But there was actually two Tarzan movies in the 80s, one in 84 with Christopher Lambert, I believe, or Harlander guy. And then, of course, the original one, I should say original, but it's by Miles O'Keefe here.
Original,
like
you have to go way
with,
back.
Yeah,
with Bo Derek.
Yeah.
Yes. And so the thing with this guy is he's a very handsome guy, despite the stupid haircut he's got in this film. He's got a great physique. He's about 6'2", 6'3", 200, 220, whatever. And the problem with hunky man meat, like in Dark Shadows, they don't use the hunky man meat till its fullest potentials. They keep him covered up in this really stupid outfits when they don't show off his physique. This is really like a kid's level kind of introduction to Sir Gawain the Green Knight, King Arthur, all these other things that this is loosely based on. Because if you didn't know literature, you'd have no idea what the fuck is going on here.
This is why I liked it. It's King Arthur.
Oh my gosh, this actually is very important because I was going to bring up, Rob, they actually had an adaptation come out like 3 years ago, right?
Yep.
Of this story.
Yep.
It was a crappy movie. That's a little rough. That's a different movie, obviously, but I think there are elements of this adaptation and actually the new adaptation that if you blended them together, you would have a really good film. I think both films are lacking in certain regards, and I think that if you blended them together somehow in this, in some way, you could have a really good adaptation of The Green Knight.
Yeah, I mentioned before that it starts off with a good start, and I know that Chad's mentioned that too. So RDV, this is kind of like when we talk about getting hooked at the very beginning. We get what I think is actually the most interesting part of the entire movie. It's not necessarily the opening hook, but the opening actor. And despite how dumb and stupid he looks physically, you get your typical stuff. You got a king. It's the end of the year. It's the Yuletide, end of the year situation. And so they're going to have a feast, and all his knights are there, whatever. And I was popping hard when I watched this because I'm like, shit, what am I seeing? The king is pissed because his knights have all gone
Yep.
soft, and none of them really want to do shit. And so, like, you know, he gets the big feast. He's like, take it all back. He throws like an apple at one of the guys. Somebody's not paying attention to him, goes to get some alcohol. He's furious. And the idea is that, shit, you guys have gotten soft. When have you ever done anything for me? It's not like they've done anything recently. And they're all just staring at him like buffoons.
Because
And
they
then
all want a
somehow
piece.
miraculously, the
They're
perfect
lazy.
timing. Huh?
They're all lazy bums.
Yeah, they have gotten soft because, you know, hard men, hard times, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, you conveniently get Sean Connery stunt double coming in on a horse who manages to leave on his own.
Sean Connery. Don't you
Yeah,
dare.
well, the thing is about this, it's so low budget, but it still looks kind of good. The sets and everything else there, too. So he gets there, the horse leaves. He's in this ridiculously green outfit, which they got the green light on him. And, you know, I keep bringing up Hunky Man Meat. If you guys have listened to our Dark Shadows review of the rebooted show, the revival from 1991, I believe, there's a character in there I refer to as that because he's so damn good looking in the 80s sense, but they kind of don't use him. That's the problem, again, like I said, this movie has. But here you've got Sean Connery coming in, and you're like, holy fuck. He's this guy that says, hey, which one of you is brave? Here's my axe. Chop my head off, but if I survive, I get to chop yours off too. 1 for 1. And the king's like, hell yeah, my guys are soft. Who's going to do it? Nobody will. So then the one squire does, and he gets knighted. And of course, he goes to chop off Sean Connery's head, which if you want to see this movie, if nothing more, after 10 minutes, when you see Sean Connery's animatronic head with a little bit of blood there and his headless body walking towards it, picking up and putting it back on, take my money. Am I wrong?
No, that was entertaining.
A lot more entertaining than say Renfield, but I don't want to get into a shitty contest.
I will say this, so you can complain about Renfield much, but that's the highest number recent viewed.
And
People like it.
People spent money on it. That's different than liking it. So
Miles O'Keefe, football player, played at Mississippi State.
Yeah,
joined the Air Force, then got into acting. He did Tarzan was the first one. I guess that's pretty much what he's known for is Tarzan.
Yes,
because that was the big thing in the 80s.
And with Bo Derek.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I was like, damn it, we should have watched that instead.
You know, the one thing about Bo Derek is I always remember this one line from Frasier, where Roz talks about a friend of hers that makes Bo Derek look like Bo Diddley, and that's the closest thing that I can come to when somebody talks about
and that's the closest we ever come to Frasier on this channel.
Well, Frasier's brilliant.
Yeah.
So,
if you say
art.
so.
What's that?
It's art.
No, so in this movie, it is a strong start, so I give it credit for that. So basically, it's a very simple formula. The knight says, you know what, you're young, you haven't gotten a taste of the world, but, you know, I applaud you for basically being no one's got any balls to step up to me, Sean Connery, aka the Green Knight. So I'm going to come back in here and chop your head off. And the kid's like, well, you know, what can I do? And there's some nice little writing in here about what it's like to be young and not recognizing and stuff. So he gives him a riddle. And of course, the idea is that if he can solve it, maybe he'll survive. And, you know, he gets all suited up. And what I popped really hard because this movie could have really devolved into serious nonsense. And maybe it still did. But when he's dressed up in his armor and he's got his squire with him and they're riding and he's like, where are we going? Well, we're going to go west. Why? Well, it's the way the wind blows. So they're riding west and they don't know where to go. And he's got to take a leak. And he's like, you know, how do I take a leak in here? And the guy's like, here. And he hands him a key, which I thought was funny. And then, of course, this is a key moment, no pun intended there, because they meet an evil witch and all that. I'm like, fuck, did they rip Conan off or what? But I thought it was funny because he's like, man, I'm hungry. What food did you bring? And he's like, well, I didn't. You know, you're supposed to hunt for on your own. So there's some funny things in here that you usually just don't see.
I gotta ask Pixel, you know, you watch Indiana Jones. I imagine you're a fan of the movies.
A big fan of, especially.
So you basically recognize that there's basically about 3 people from the Indiana Jones films in here.
No, I didn't, because
Ronald Lacey plays Oswald in this. At the end, he's the guy that gets his face melted off in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, he's in this. Okay.
Yeah,
see, cool. Not even Rob did, and he was alive when they came out.
I want to talk about the Black Knight in this.
I liked his armor.
Knight, I will stop you.
Like I said, when it comes to the Black Knight, nothing tops Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I'm sorry. So when I try to see a serious version of this, I'm thinking like, man, they should have hammed it up more and just made it like Monty Python.
Yeah, so the chick, the evil sort of witchy, sort of, it's actually Morgana Le Fay, I think's her name, or like that, the Lady in Light, maybe, the one that has the sword of Excalibur. I mean, I guess it's loosely based on that. She basically gives them stuff, but for a price and blah, blah, blah. And they have to go to this town. And of course, this secret town is actually abandoned. And they're supposed to like blow this stupid horn or whatever. And look, the outside stuff looks great. It really, really does. Even though it's a cheap ass film. When this guy comes up, if he didn't talk at all, which has got a really horrible like slapback echo thing from like the 80s, you know, like a fuzz box almost, but not nearly as cool sounding. He looks so uncomfortable. He goes to joust with him while the dude has his sword, and it's horrible, but it's an excuse so you could see, you know, him being dragged around in his full suit of armor. And then, of course, he wants to fight valiantly, but the Black Knight kind of cheats a little bit. So even though he gets the best of him, and I thought you could tell when things were getting serious in this battle, because they shifted from the playing ground, the ground that they're on after he got him off his horse, knocked him off, where they went for round 2 and 3 when they were in the tiny little swampy area with water. This looked so painfully awkward, like I wanted to look away. I was so hooked into this going, I want more, because it was that bad. But it's like, I don't know, after the strong hook and this kind of silliness, whatever, I'm like, okay, I'm sold. It's going to be a goofy adventure. And I think it was written for young kids because it's not, you know, adult-ish in that manner. It's super simplistic, which I don't have a problem with. Of course, it leads to them getting into Lost Town, second part of the riddle, and then getting out and double cross, but not till he meets the person that's actually pretty damn good looking, and it's a lady that he falls in love with. Yep. So it's just basically like a life story sort of thing. Here's where it starts to slow down to me. What were you going to say?
I was trying to say that because you're going too far into the review. I was trying to say that LK he said about the special effects when he was in the 80s, growing up watching this. He said it was awesome. Now as you get older, you can tell like, wow, it's not as good because a lot of us have been spoiled to basically the CG and this more spectacular props and stuff. This being a very low budget was really, like I said, it wasn't really made for like adults. It was really made for kids. And yeah, the Black Knight. If they would have, all he had to do was stop freaking moaning in the armor. That's what pissed me off. I was like, he sounded like Bane.
It's me, Batman. I'm going to break your back.
Like, had it been like more, like the armor was kind of cheap too. Can you imagine though if they would have had like a much more polished armor, but like and just having him holding a silver head and throwing it down to the guy. It's like next person. Like make him a badass. Instead, they made him like, oh, I'm a 90-year-old guy. I'll fight you though.
I am going to stop you, Sir Gawain. Bruce Gawain.
So that's the difference of watching this movie. Like if I would have watched it, like when LK and Verity when they're kids watching it, probably would have a totally different experience. Who knows? Maybe I still wouldn't. Maybe I would have hated it. Now that I'm older and I can recognize more things, I have more respect for stuff. Especially, see, I look more into like as far as the stage production and the scenery, the setting, the acting more though than I did back then. I would just be like, he's gonna cut his head off, cut his arm off. Oh, what the heck? This is dumb.
To be fair, it's also easier for you to look up those things. So, in the 80s, you couldn't have without subscribing to some magazine that goes ahead and discusses specifically fantasy movies.
But that's what I'm talking about. It's just watching. Like when we watch the Chuck Norris movies, I'm constantly looking at the setting. I'm complimenting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the information behind it. Well, information.
It is cool. I mean, without reading the information, I'd be like, okay, I have no idea where they filmed, but it must be somewhere in Europe.
Well, it does look good. You're absolutely right. I think that there's a lot of settings that really do look good. I enjoyed even the ridiculous. His face is orange.
Spray tans,
he's making
like spray tans. What can you say?
He makes Donald Trump look pale. Sorry. That's just a tease.
Again, it's pretty simple, but this movie really makes sense for the time. Being a canon film, they're going to do their own take on it. And again, when you got stuff like Flash Gordon, and you've got like Conan, and you've got other things like that too. Many of them we haven't covered. We've done all the B movies, Gore, the other stuff, Barbarian Queen. We haven't even tackled half of them, or even close to it. This, like I say, is not intended to be a grade A film, and it's not. It's still reasonably competent for what it's trying to accomplish, and in that I think it's successful. And I don't think it's one of those movies that it upsets you because it's just like they don't try to treat it seriously. You can tell it's low budget, but if you've watched enough of these, there's a certain way that it goes, and you can still be entertained by it. You don't really have those today. Earlier tonight live, Pixel, you and I had talked about the Pope's Exorcist, the Russell Crowe movie, and the one thing that we both agreed on at it was it looks great. Russell Crowe looks like he's having a lot of fun. It's kind of a little bit cheesy in that sense, but there's times when they're able to turn it on and be serious. This is not one of those movies, but it does know what it is, and it's not trying to be more. And that's why we've said here on the Xtreme Movie Show, and again, we've only scratched the surface of the Canon Film Guide. They give you exactly this kind of stuff, entertaining stuff. If it's sword and sorcery, they're going to have the gaudy costumes, the beautiful girls. They're going to have horses riding. The fights may not be all that great, but I mean, come on, you're talking about a company that's produced some of the most fun entertainment and ninja movies of all time. And RDV, I know you may or may not have seen The Pope's Exorcist, but the Pope is played by Franco Nero, who, of course, is in the second best ninja movie of all time. Revenge of the Ninja, or Enter, whichever the hell the first one was.
I actually want to go ahead and say yes. I don't think I can think of another movie where a frog asks to be fucked by Sean Connery. But
what?
Say that again.
What?
I can't think of another movie where a frog asks to be fucked by Sean Connery.
You lost me.
Did you not see the scene where he turns Morgana into a frog and she says, "But you'll still visit me at night, right?" I can't remember the exact wording, but basically ask for that. That's the joke.
He wants.
Yeah,
but
the joke. The joke is
I forgot
that's
that.
the joke.
I just started talking about me in the chat. And I was like, "What are you talking?"
I want to talk about Verity Princess. She talks about a very important part of this film, which I feel that the new film, The New Green Knight, didn't accept. The theme of growth and change, love and loss, and going from boy to man.
Yeah.
That's very important. The whole thing is meant to be a lesson. The legend itself is a lesson. The Knights of the Round Table, they wore a green sash after to always remember this event. But you can't have that in the new one, really, with how it implies that it ends. But this one, this goes ahead and it does have its proper ending. It does finish.
You know what the green sash is made out of, guys?
It's
love.
Made out of love and redemption. No. So
it's made out of the friends we made along the way.
So I want to point out that Pixel, because he keeps talking about the remake, the recent one.
I have to.
This is a remake of the 1974 movie.
Yes, kind of, sort of. Yeah, it's the same guy who did it way back when, so he had familiarity with it. You're right, RDV.
So, and then in between that, 1981 comes a movie that is received widely by a lot of people as being one of the best King Arthur movies. It's called Excalibur.
Yep. Liam Neeson's
So when this come out, I can see why this movie wouldn't have not done so well, because they're like, what the heck? We went from Excalibur, now he's kind of downgraded. This kind of felt like like I would say Dragon Slayer is better than this. Dragon Slayer has its issues.
You misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm simply saying, I'm talking about it's not a remake. It's an adaptation. It's all adapting the same legend. But my point is that when you compare the two, this one is a little more faithful.
Yeah, and unless you're a scholar on literature stuff, you're not going to know that. So I know some people today, to your point earlier, you talked about access of information. You could debate all these things. As a kid, we'd be watching going, hey man, I saw this thing where the James Bond guy got his head chopped off and he put it back on. And then like this circus tent appeared out of nowhere with a chicken in it serving him food. And you'd be like, yeah, really? What happened next? I don't know, but he got the hots for this one babe. And then there's this fight, and then he was in jail, and then she burned up, and then there was the fight at the end. And you're like, okay, there's a story there somewhere. That's really it. But I like the comment that you made there, RDV, about it being like Dragon Slayer, which I think was a bit more of a serious approach, or a little bit different when it comes to that. And it's still, I think, it's a very good movie. But again, unless you like these kinds of things, you don't realize that. You go, oh, it's an action film. I want sword, sorcery, and magic. Well, no, there's a story behind it, and all that stuff is supposed to support the story.
And
Canon really didn't try to go as highbrow as Dragon Slayer did. It tried to have the bare necessities, but again, it knows what it's going to do. It's going to crank up the horses, the scenery, and all that kind of stuff. It's going to make do with the money it hasn't spent on it in other areas, right?
yeah, and it says as when it comes to King Arthur, we expect either magic with Merlin, or we expect a lot of sword fighting, or we expect Richard Gere being a dick.
Which, if you watch Internal Affairs, he is, and that's a great one we've got to cover.
But
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I was gonna say, like I said, so this was a different story. Now, it's no secret that I read comic books, review comic books, sit over.
What? You do?
Can you mute him for like the rest of the stream? He's not even doing a proper Sean Connery voice either.
I don't want to hear it.
No, so
I can do my Sean Connery voice if you want.
I had no idea the Green Knight was even a thing. I didn't know that. I know the movie came out, but I never watched it. I had no idea it was connected to King Arthur.
Right.
I'd never seen this movie before either. So I read Sony comic book, and the crossover with King Arthur. I was like, the Green Knight. What the heck is Green Knights? So it's kind of going to watch this, kind of getting to see what the Green Knight kind of is.
Right.
It's a little cool because I was like, it's like, because I had no idea. I'm like, oh, the Green Knight's this person
Made up thing, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'll close with this because I think you're bringing up an interesting point there. I mean, I know you guys cover a lot of comic book stuff in your reviews on your other channel. When you hop over here, we talk different things. But the interesting thing about this movie is, in the 80s, there was still this idea that you could adapt a lot of, I would say, classical literature. And obviously there's the issue that we don't dive into too much about what's available due to copyright laws and how that's changed. So in the public domain, you have a lot of these works, so it's easy fodder to be made into film or TV or radio adaptations, which are still a thing back in the 80s. I clearly remember listening to one or two of the different adaptations of Lord of the Rings being audio and being played on radio at the time. That was kind of interesting. And to me, to your point, if you didn't know about the Green Knight or Arthur, your first introduction to all these stories is movies. So then if that piques your interest in it, you might be like, oh, there's a book on it, or there's a comic, or there's something else. That's kind of cool. And so it kind of showed you as a kid that, okay, maybe reading's not all that bad or all that stupid. It's kind of a neat story. Oh, maybe these kind of things are all related, because you go, well, how the hell is Barbarian Queen like this one? Well, it's kind of really not, in terms of the literature part. But you might go, hey, Excalibur, those guys took it real seriously there too. And if you've ever tried reading the original literature, it's not necessarily a fun read where you just sit down and it's a quick page turner. I mean, it's pretty dense, like some things can be, especially if you're reading the original text and not more updated vernacular, as it were. So I think your point there actually is a pretty good one, because again, like with War Games in 1983, very easy way not to talk down to your audience watching and talk about what computers are and what they do and everything else. And of course, now here we are 30, 40 years later, and things are totally different. So kind of interesting that you brought that up, RDD, and then point, to be honest, I didn't really think about, but I think it's probably the most biggest one we could actually have, other than, again, animatronic head of Sean Connery getting lopped off. If you're under the influence of any particular thing, that might make it a little bit more enjoyable, because definitely there are some movies like it. This movie does have a little bit of a dreamlike kind of quality to it and pacing. I certainly don't mind it. I'd much rather watch something like this than something that's a bit pretentiously kind of fake and pushed, like, say, a Willow, which I'm not a fan of. And there's definitely movies that are like that. But this one, again, it is what it is. Doesn't try to do anything more than that, and that's successful. It's at least worth one watch one time.
Yeah, I want to comment on Sir Gawain over his, Michael Key's appearance here. it fits. You know, even though he's kind of scrawny, he's got the long hair. We laugh at like, well, I like that. It looks silly. You know, well, that's how they were. You know, not everybody was tall Arnold.
Very few people could eat.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and like when he's in the castle with from where was it Surly or whatever the name was?
The castle.
Surreal, yeah, or Cernal Claire, aka Lynette. When he puts on he wakes up shirtless and he puts the shirt on, the puffy shirt. I almost started laughing because it just looks ridiculous. But
he's walking around in those white leggings. I mean, the dude's got a body. Use it, for God's sakes.
So what killed me the most, though, is when Sean Connery first throws the axe and almost kills those kids. Did you see how they sped it up?
Yeah.
They just kind of like teleported to the side.
Or when they're hunting a unicorn because they want to eat it, and then we get the wonk 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 because it teleports away. I'm like, is he supposed to be a good knight or a bad knight? He's just like, it's a magical creature. It's rare. Let's go eat it. And it's so obviously got the horn put on it. It's so bad. And it's like, well, if you're gonna teleport, why'd you fucking run away, you dumbass unicorn?
Verity, I did not watch the 76 movie. I found it through Wikipedia. Let me know that there was a one before this. You type in Gawain and the Green Knight, or anything Green Knight, it pops up. So I was like, oh.
I think it might have been the person that directed the one before or something. So if you look at that lines, I have not researched it, but I'm aware of it, that this was kind of loosely based off of the older one.
The scary thing about this is IMDb gives the previous one from 1974 a higher rating than this one.
Well, a lot of people didn't like Sword and Sorcery, and they thought it was an insult to movie making because it's lowbrow crap. And I've said before, that's people being elitist snobs saying, oh, something has to be a big budget to be good. I mentioned briefly here, kind of as we're wrapping things up, that, again, earlier tonight we did The Pope's Exorcist, which is only about a $20 million movie, but it's made triple its money and all that too. And, I think Renfield, I don't know how it's doing, but it was a bigger budget, but a lot of people went to go see it. And what's the other movie that's making a shit ton of money? Is it the Super Mario movie? Nothing about it, but it's making serious bank.
So Super Mario's making serious bank because it actually has the guy who created it heavily involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and that's what's important with films like Super Mario Brothers, with the Pope's Exorcist,
Sonic.
Winfield. So much fun.
That's what it's all about, really. And I think you can have fun with this film too. Maybe got to be in the right mood, but again, when we review it, I like to advertise it's a canon classic, so you know what you're getting yourself into. So with all the great canon films we reviewed here, Revenge of the Ninja, Another Ninja, Ninja 3: The Domination.
So if you guys are going to watch this, follow us up with Highlander 2: The Quickening. Let's get that full Sean Connery experience.
We'll get the Zardos.
You need all of me.
All right, guys. Anything we need to plug as we wrap it up? Any final comments? Let's go around the horn. RDV.
Well, I'm just gonna say that this is the last time we'll see Pix on the channel for a while.
Yeah, I'll be gone for a couple of weeks, so instead of Wayward Pines over the next few weeks, I'll be running solo with a couple of things too, unless you and I do it too.
We're shipping him out of the country. He's gonna do some research for us on some old movies.
We can't tell you that he's going to participate in the Kumite, but we hope that he comes back in one piece.
I'll be back.
Only in a rerun. Pixel, you got any final comments? Any last words?
Jeez, well, I love the faith that you guys have. It was nice knowing you all.
This has been a Dan Curtis production.
That's right. This was a Professor Pixel production.
A lot of smoke machines in this film, along with a lot of lights, and not nearly as many candles as Dark Shadows, but then that's the gold standard for candles in a movie, despite Enigma videos from the early 90s.
Said, we haven't reviewed Excalibur on here, but eventually probably we'll get to that.
Absolutely, without question.
Check out, if you haven't watched this movie, or just watch it again. It's I'm sure you probably forgot a lot of it, if you watched it like 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, nothing you need to remember.
And then watch Dragon Slayer, watch The Magic Sword. If you haven't watched that, that's a really good movie. I like that.
Tonight we'll be reviewing the next episode of Rabbit Hole. RDV and I will be doing that, and then to be determined on Sunday. So if there's anything on your guys' short list you'd like us to give the extreme treatment to, you extremists, just let us know. We'll be happy to take a look at that. Right now we're at that pivot point with having done Brian's Song and Thief and a few of those films. We're going to transition probably into something else. We do have Father's Day, Mother's Day coming up, where we have our own little things to review. Father's Day specifically for we'd like to do Commando. Mother's Day we just do women in movies.
You'd like to go Commando?
Sir, there's only one way to go Commando, and that's, when you're feeling extreme. So maybe we're all Commando right now, right? I mean, people are driving, listening. I don't know where you're at. I just hope that you come back and share your experiences with us, because Bolo Young at 80 probably still kick your ass. But it'd be a good story nonetheless, and that's what we want to tell
also,
here.
anybody watches the replay, or you guys in the chat right now, if you have a recommendation for something else to review, let us know. Leave a comment down below after the stream.
Yeah, and another thing too is that when I joke about us being 80s based and all that, again, the idea here is that RDV is kind of in the middle demographic, and Pixel's in a younger one. So we bring these different historical perspectives and try to communicate just how things look differently. The point about RDV mentioning how he didn't really know too much about the green eye as a thing, or Pixel going, what the fuck? It's kind of interesting, and that's where we kind of always relate it to the things that we've talked about here on the Extreme Movie Show, and that's the unique part that we like.
Those are my favorite moments of Pixels when he's like, he has no idea what we're gonna watch, like gore. He's like, what the hell is this?
No, gore. Listen, I understood what was happening in this movie because I've seen another version of it. I read about it before, and going ahead and seeing it, I understood what was going on. What it was just, I don't know. It was fine. That's what it was. Gore is a disappointment to me because it could have been better.
They should have focused more on climate change. Okay.
No, what?
Stop.
He's not
all right, guys. There you go. Have a good night. Take care. Stay extreme.
Goodbye. Hope I'll see you again.
I was never exposed to that much.